Namaskar. Hello friends. Singular perpetual Brahman. The singular Brahman in its unmanifest form is quite different from the two split manifestations, namely perceiver and the perceived, which are essentially limited, as against the singular, which is unlimited in the physical sense. Hence, the singular is superior to the split manifestations. The perceiver is still fundamentally in the image of the singular, and its ability to perceive is indestructible. However, the perceived is impermanent. Perceiver and perceived are to be understood as a phenomenon, as a concept, rather than as physical objects. Also, perceiver and perceived are not independent of each other, but one determines the other. Both are transient, like waves rising on the ocean, only to subside again. If a seeker can manage to constantly be aware of this and be focused on the singular, he becomes self-realized. Spiritual attitude. Most of us who may have experienced the world fair bit think that they know everything. While that may be substantially true, if not literally, that knowledge is limited only to the physical perceptible world. Nobody knows what is it that may be behind the physical world, how it came about, why, who created it, how long will it last, and what will happen when it ends, if and when it indeed does. We do not know anything about whether we existed in some form before we were born in this physical world, nor do we know anything about what will happen to us after we die and disappear from this world. Yet we waste so much emotion in what happens in our life and grieve over a so-called sad event like death of a loved one. So the lesson is that it is not right to grieve over anything in this world, and people who are well versed in the spiritual knowledge know and understand this. Shri Krishna exhorts Arjun to not be so completely engrossed only in the worldly life, and instead think a little about what may be behind the physical world, though it may not be perceptible to our physical senses. Spiritual practice. A seeker should lead a moderate life, eating, sleeping, and doing every routine function in moderation, neither too much nor too little. It is only by following a moderate lifestyle that the seeker's mind can remain stable and be supportive of spiritual contemplation. Otherwise, the mind will remain agitated and will not be able to focus on spiritual contemplation. The naturally uncontrollable mind is a major obstacle in spiritual practice. Shri Krishna very compassionately agrees, but he also proceeds to say how the mind can be controlled. The key to it is vairagya, that is detachment, and practice together with patience. It means that in the first place, a seeker has to be conscious of the need to detach from worldly interests. Without the desire to detach, there is no chance of proceeding any further. Once that desire settles in, the seeker must consciously and critically analyze every situation and the action that his mind pushes him into. He needs to contemplate all the time and choose the course of action that will help him reduce his worldly interests rather than mechanically acting to fulfill every worldly interest. That is the spiritual practice which will help the seeker to gradually get rid of his worldly attachments and be firmly settled in God consciousness. That will be liberation. It is also important to appreciate the criticality of patience in spiritual pursuit. A seeker cannot expect instantaneous enlightenment and liberation. It needs immense perseverance and patience. One has to keep in mind that a sincere practice is what he can do, and the result will be dependent on the divine will and the divine timetable. For a seeker, keeping mind engrossed in God is the most important part of his spiritual practice. Then the seeker will lose his limited identity and merge with God. But Shri Krishna says in the Geeta that only a very rare few can manage that kind of achievement. In my understanding, it is so by design. Since this physical world is created for the soul's experience, the worldly life is certainly an important and necessary part of the divine scheme. So, most people are naturally engaged in worldly pursuits. If we believe in multiple lives for a soul, then it means that most people need many lives to get fully satiated with the worldly life. So they remain attached to worldly life till their very last breath. That is the reason why only a rare few at any time may have reached that fully satiated state where they are no more interested in worldly life. However, spiritual evolution is gradual. So it is not as if a switch is turned on or off, and from that moment onwards, one is completely detached. On the contrary, one may slowly start losing interest in worldly pursuits. When one senses that, he should work towards strengthening that trend by spiritual practice so that the progress can be faster. Our gurus say that once Vairagya Bhav sets in and one comes under a guru's grace, it takes 3 lives for liberation. I will stop here today and continue the next time. Until then, bye, take care.